Hello, everyone. Welcome to this LudoNarraCon panel. The topic for today is Unbound-likes, exploring a genre of games around home, grief, nostalgia, and the surreal. What that all means, we will get into shortly, but I just want to do some quick intros first. So my name is Sam. I co-host a podcast called the 20M Podcast. I'm also a writer and a narrative designer, and I work at a publisher. And I now hand it over to Rhea, Scott, and Juan to do their intros.
Hi everyone, I'm Rhea. I am part of a two-person indie game studio called I Miss My Friend Studio, and we are making our debut title called Fishbowl.
Hi, I'm Scott. I'm the co-founder of Sigono, and I'm also the producer and designer of the Opus series. So our latest game is called Opus Prison Peak.
Hello everyone, my name is Juan. I am the creator of Maboroshi Artworks, the studio who has recently launched Last Time I Saw You. Really looking forward to our talk today.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I guess to give a bit more context to the audience who's listening to our discussion today, the term Unbound-likes, this kind of was derived from an episode on the 20M podcast, which we did last year. Coincidentally, it was when we were reviewing LudoNarraCon demos from last year. And the name comes from a game that I know we all are aware of and really love. It's Space For The Unbound by the folks at Toge Productions and Mojiken Studios. And of course, this is not like a definitive definition of the term unbound-like, but some of the things we discussed were, games that invoke a strong sense of nostalgia, or games that have heavy themes around home, belonging, and personal history. Games that can give you that feeling of, being in a dream or kind of like a dreamlike state. And of course, supernatural elements while still being grounded in reality. So A Space for the Unbound is not the first game to do this, and of course it will not be the last. It's just a trend that we're noticing amongst games that are going along a similar trajectory, and most notably like the games that all of you are making. And so I kind of want to invite all of you to just kind of think, and we'll go with this first question. And really it is the exploration of the personal journey. Like what kind of inspired all of you to make games around personal journeys? And maybe we can start with Rhea.
Yeah, for sure. So we actually started the development of Fishbowl right in the middle of the pandemic. So that was such a difficult time of loss and grief, and it was also a time of hope because there were so many communities coming together to sort of support each other and help each other out through that very dark time. And both Pratik and I have lost grandparents who we were really, really close to. So the aspect of grief is something that we have personally experienced. And we know how difficult it is to sort of move through it. And yet, if you sort of take it at your own pace, you're able to make sense of it and go through that loss in a way that is very personal to you. So these were themes that we were very keen to put into Fishbowl and have players sort of experience it in their own way. And of course, there are several fictitious characters in Fishbowl, basically all of them, and they have their own settings and events that define their story and their backstory. But a lot of the emotional aspects that they deal with are very personal to us. And I think what inspired this exploration was that with our sort of game, which is a visual novel with branching narrative and multiple endings, we were able to explore a lot of different avenues behind these emotions and really kind of predict how different people in different situations might react very differently to certain things that they are experiencing. So that was something that was both very, very challenging and also very intriguing to explore as creators. Yeah.
See, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Rhea. I kind of want to pivot over to Scott now because I know Opus is a series in itself, and it's got like the first three games are quite like these epic adventures rooted in sci-fi, and I just kind of wanted to ask you as well, like kind of how you tie these like grand adventures with such deeply personal stories as well.
Mm-hmm. I think instead of personal, I think we kind of focus, like for Sigono, it started with me and Brian. So we kind of discussed what we really enjoy when reading a story or playing through a game. So we kind of come up with like words that can describe our game in a grander scale. So like in the beginning, we wanted to make something that's very vast. and you can kind of explore inside, trying to collect things. And while you collect things, you'll start to learn more about this world, and you kind of feel more fulfilled and more accomplished. So we kind of use this notion of feeling to try to create shape our game. So the first game is going to be it's exploring the space. So you're in a vast space looking for Earth, basically. So while you look for Earth, you're also starting to scan different other planets, and also the story progresses. So that gives the notion of while you explore the vast space, you're also learning more about this world, as well as learning more about yourself. And while we started our second game, Rocket of Whispers, we started thinking about an overall theme of creating our stories. And so right now, our story all shares the same theme of love, soul, and self-fulfillment. So these three are like the main themes for all of our games. So when you play through it, when you go on a journey with your character, um, they'll experience all these different emotions, and we try to make it like their reactions as close as humanely as possible, so people, while experiencing through this story, will feel connected with the characters inside. So even though the settings are different, but we kind of focuses on the theme of love, soul, and self-fulfillment throughout these four games. So as well as the fourth game, which looks quite different from a space exploration
Yes.
game.
Yes, I
Yeah.
really want to get into that in just a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
But quickly pivoting over to Juan, you've made an incredible game that is, for me, it feels very personal, and for the both of us, I think as people who have lived, we both live in Japan. Like you just mentioned, you lived in Japan for 10 years, and you're making this game that's set in Japan. How does Last Time I Saw You tie into whether it's your personal journey or a personal journey within the game?
Well, it's true that last time I saw you comes from a personal experience. I went through the original idea of making this game, which is something that happened in Japan. So it's not directly tied to Japan, but it happened there. And maybe if I never went to Japan, this thing would never have happened, and maybe this game didn't exist, right? So yeah, somehow everything is connected. In my case, the idea of for making Last Time I Saw You came from a personal heartbreak experience I went through some years ago that for some reason affected me more than other times that I went through a similar situation in my life, and that made me go through a self-recovery, acceptance, letting go process that I really don't know why that time I was more aware of it, that this was happening inside of me. And after healing or recovering, I felt that as an artist or as a developer, I wanted to share that with people, or not talk about my personal experience, but talk about a similar experience that hopefully and somehow could make other people feel related to, or feel something positive out of it. So in the case of Last Time I Saw You, it's not only my own personal experience, but also things that I've heard or I've seen, things that have happened in my family or friends or people that are close to me. And the reason why this is the case is because I've personally feel that for me it's easier to write about things that I've experienced or I've been through or that I've lived close to me rather than something that I've personally never been through. And I guess that's why Last Time I Saw You is the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting how we're all making these games that have involved personal journeys, but somehow, the response you probably get from a lot of people who play a game is, wow, this is so relatable, or this feels like something I've gone through as well. And it's interesting, there's this word that a lot of people that used when they were describing a space with the Unbound, and it's anemoa. and it's a feeling of nostalgia for something that you've actually not experienced. So Scott, like, firstly, I do want to ask you about the kind of departure with the fourth game, and how different it's not as sci-fi so far, at least based on the trailer. But I do think like some of the elements you've put in your trailers, like the whole like capturing moments, and the way that the camera kind of stays on these like still objects, it really does feel like, wow, like, have I seen that before? Like, have I experienced it before? Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Oh,
Game, we're trying really hard to invoke a sense of nostalgia. And actually, Anemoia is like I haven't learned about this world until now, but I kind of looked up on it, and it kind of perfectly explain what our game wants to convey. So of course, our game is based on it doesn't base on any culture or any like specific culture. We kind of want to make our game as globally acceptable as possible. But of course, like I think for people from a certain cultural background, especially in the Asian countries, they'll see like objects that they've seen before, basically. So maybe a post box that you can put letters into, or a brand of drink. That'll invoke a sense of nostalgia for that region of the players. But of course, we want to make the game as globally approachable as possible. So we kind of find ways that conveys the nostalgia feeling, but it's actually relatable like for all the players around the world. So we use this like the colors and also the settings of the game. So in the trailer, you kind of see like all these kind of desolated places and also ruins of some sort. But instead of portraying these ruins as a really dark and also abandoned place, we kind of shine a really warm light onto it. So it kind of gives you guys a feeling that, oh, this thing, when it was when it was alive, or when it was like bustling, there's a lot of warmth inside. So that visually will give a sense of anemoia to the players. And of course, using a camera. Camera is something that you kind of document. You kind of want to use it to document things that you don't want to forget. So that already conveys a sense of nostalgia, because there's something that you really want to keep, and then in years later you can kind of look at it and feel a nostalgic sense, basically. Mm-hmm. So I think these two elements together combined makes our game have a sense of anemoia feeling of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and just quickly, like, how different is the fourth game to the other three? Because we've got three quite deeply sci-fi games, and then now, just based on the trailer that I've seen, and I know like a lot of things will be revealed soon as the game comes out, but it feels very slice of life now with some supernatural elements.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite different, but actually we kind of like keep a pattern of the first game and the third game. They all take place in space. And the second and fourth game, they actually take place on a planet. So we kind of kept this kind of theme going. But of course, I think this time the overall art style and sense will be a little bit more uplifting, hopefully, and a little bit more appealing, I guess. So, I mean, the setting will be pretty different, but I think for the fans of the previous Opus series, they'll find something that they can relate to and they feel nostalgia from, basically.
Awesome. And then Rhea with Fishbowl, for me personally, I think the colors make it feel very nostalgic, kind of like a bit of like a Y2K Polly Pocket kind of vibe. Is that what you were going for with the visual design?
I'm so happy to hear that, because we spent way too much time on like figuring out our color palette than was allowed like in our production schedule. So it feels very like satisfying to hear that. Yeah, like I think the lighting and the colors of Fishbowl were very intentional, because we wanted to invoke the sense of both melancholy as well as hope. And we didn't want to veer too much towards either space, where we didn't want it to be like super colorful and that very typical sort of cozy game aesthetic, because it does deal with very difficult themes. So we wanted it to kind of come across in that way. But it was very interesting, like about your question on like the nostalgia, and it was very interesting that when we first started posting screenshots and gifs of Fishbowl on social media, there were a lot of people who could immediately relate to it in some way, which we found a bit surprising, especially for it coming from a very personal story. And as we kind of went into it further and the game kind of fleshed out more with our demo, we realized that not a lot of people would know about all of like the Indian objects and artifacts that are there in the game, and they may not have a grandmother who's wearing a sari every single day, but all of the themes are so relatable and they resonate so well with players about somebody who's struggling with self-doubt and grief, and somebody who's just moved to a new city for her first job for the very first time. And these are the sort of universal themes, I feel, which create that emotional connection that helps to have that familiarity even with something that is completely unknown to you. So that has been a really interesting experience.
That's really interesting. I think that's even an entirely separate like topic to unpack as well. The whole like cultural authenticity and how you can represent your culture at a global level and still invite people to be interested and to get to know it, right?
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
but Juan, I feel like kind of saved the best one for last. When I was playing your game, and I think the school bell went off, like I kind of was like, oh, like that kind of feeling. And I know it's also because I live in Japan and I watch anime and things like that. But I feel like just little cues like that, like really take people back to their childhood, whether it's where they did grow up in Japan or otherwise, or these like very intentional decisions to create that sense of nostalgia.
Well, I mean, the game is set in Japan, of course, and I've always wanted to recreate Japan the most accurate way possible as a sign of respect of the place where I was living and and well, because I really wanted it to make it look real. But the thing of Japan that I think we all might agree is that somehow all the world is kind of connected to Japan because of anime. So even people who has never been to Japan can feel that nostalgia that is coming from the anime they might have watched as kids. Especially, I was born in the 90s, so all the anime I watched as a kid was from the 90s or the 80s, but still I think that nowadays animes from the 90s are still being watched or recommended by people nowadays. So it's like what you said, like the school bell, the cicadas in summer, the orange sunsets. There is a series of visual and audio elements of Japan that I think everyone is familiar with and might recreate that sense of nostalgia. Another thing about Japan, and personally Osaka, where I was at the moment of making the game, is that it's a city, but I think this can be extrapolated to Japan in general. They have like very modern or nowadays elements and buildings, but at the same time they keep a lot of old stuff. And you can walk a street in Japan and it feels like in the 70s when you're actually in 2025. And that inevitably also evokes nostalgia. Um, I think Taiwan might be a country that also has like a lot of elements that that might be related to the past, but also, well, but yeah, what I'm trying to say is that yeah, that those things are present, and in my case, I was personally really happy to see Japanese people from 40, 50 years old playing the demo on the Tokyo Game Show and Beat Summit, and they them commenting how nostalgic that was for them, like it reminded them of their childhood, and yeah, that felt really nice. But I must say that in my case, I think it's because thanks to anime, we might be connecting to this anemoia feeling strongly than if the game was set in a different setting, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've
Mm.
sensed, quite a lot of commonalities between like your intention and also Rhea's intention about cultural authenticity, which I know
Mm.
is kind of a separate topic, but that the way you're saying that you wanted to portray like a very honest depiction of Japan, and many people are making games about Japan, whether it's set in Japan or inspired by Japan, but like I guess when I played last time I saw you, it was like, okay, this feels real. This feels like very much grounded in reality. So I really appreciated your work
Thank
on
you
that.
for that. Yeah, and also there was a lot of Japanese people in the team, like making sure that the representation of their country was accurate. So
Right.
that helped, of course.
So the next topic I wanted to kind of address, which is a really interesting one because it's a shared, common theme across all three of your games, and it's how you use the supernatural to sort of elevate the narrative. And Rhea, I don't know if you want to kick us off on that one. Like why have you introduced those elements, and how does that sort of play against the personal journey that we just kind of discussed?
Yeah, for sure. So we use quite a bit of surrealism in Fishbowl to explore Aloe's psychological landscape. So Aloe is our main character, and she is living in isolation. So the entire game from start to finish is just played inside of her home. So as a visual, we wanted to have her inner feelings and her inner world sort of get a different visual entity by itself, so that when players are focusing on her past or connecting dots from her previous stories or emotions, they are able to get this kind of a blank space where they can add in their imagination to things. That was one of the important aspects of having that sort of surreal touch. And then of course, like, you've played the demo, so you know that there is also a toy talking fish inside of Fishbowl. And that was something that we also did very intentionally, because we wanted Alo to have this sort of companion, and we wanted to explore a few different ways to express her inner thoughts and dialogue instead of her just saying it by herself to the player. We thought that would be a really intriguing thing. And I've noticed that in a lot of slice of life stories or animes that I enjoy, I do enjoy there being this sort of supernatural or surreal aspect where you just feel a lot more intrigued by what is going on. It immediately adds this sense of mystery to the story. And that was, of course, also something that we wanted to tap into.
See. Scott, I'm totally not fishing for details about the game or anything, but in the trailer, it starts off very, we're taking photos, we're having this banter, and then suddenly I think some sort of magical stuff happens. Can you tell us a bit about that, or at least sort of hint about how you're sort of like balancing the real world and the surreal?
Do you feel intrigued by watching the trailer though?
I am. That's why I
Okay,
asked.
cool. I think supernatural. I agree with Rhea actually being like supernatural. The topic of discussing supernatural is very intriguing because it's out of the norm. It is something that you wouldn't expect by reading just like a normal story that would be like an autobiography or something. So I think one part is we use the supernatural element to kind of spark interest from the player because we can be a little bit more imaginative. We can use supernatural to convey things that cannot be conveyed in real life. And also another thing that we use supernatural for is to talk stories that crosses through times and space, basically. Because if you want to describe, if you want to talk a story about the civilization, there's always like a start point and end point, but it is really hard to tell the whole civilization just by talking a story in a straight line. There's different layers. You need to, when you explore a place, there's their past, there's their future, and we use a supernatural element so while the player explores one space, he can also view the space in the future and also from the past as well. So, I mean, from our second game, Rocket of Whispers, the main character is a witch, so she'll be able to communicate with the dead. So while the player explores like a certain area, he'll hear different sounds from the people from the dead, describing what has happened in this area and what has happened in the space. So while the player explores that area in present time, they'll also be able to experience what has happened in the past as well. And the third game, Echo Star Song, it's pretty much we are telling a story that can transcend times and space, basically. So we kind of use that element to build like a romantic feeling, and we also can talk about the history and also the how the life cycles basically. So spoils alert. So the love. So this is the third game basically. So the love story between the two main characters. They kind of met in their previous life as well, and we kind of tell that through different visions and also different flashbacks. So that's that. And all in the newest game, of course, I couldn't reveal much, but like the main character kind of got stuck inside a fantasy realm. So in this realm, it is something that's familiar to him, but not quite. So so basically, we use this whole fantasy world to kind of talk about like why the main character has stuck inside. There's always a meaning reason behind it. So yeah, so I couldn't reveal much, but that's it.
Thank you. I had to try. I had to try.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and Juan, I think you can probably explain a lot more better than I can. But for last time I saw you, the supernatural is Japanese folklore, so it's also got that sort of cultural angle to it. So do you want to talk a bit more about how that's been woven into the game?
Yeah, sure. For me, the supernatural approach, rather than from a fantasy perspective that could be like a magic in Harry Potter or stuff like that, it comes from the genre called magic realism, which I personally really like in literature and movies. Books like 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel García Márquez or Pedro Páramo from Juan Rulfo. Sorry about these names. There's a lot like from Latin American um, literature of this genre, and most of it comes from it. And regarding movies, could be, I don't know, Pan's Labyrinth, which also the director is Mexican. So it really comes from that part of the world. And for me, it's always been like a really attractive genre because it's like a slice of life, stories of normal people dealing with people problems, like life, love, work. But at the same time, there are some magical or supernatural elements that are present, but no one questions them. It's just like it's something there and it's kind of evocative. And it's not the main point of anything, that the main point is the human story, the human aspect of the characters. I wanted to have that approach for last time I saw you. And the thing is that Japan in general feels like a magic realism country somehow because the Japanese folklore, the yokai, the Shinto religion, all of this is still so present in Japan in a very interesting way because at the end Shinto is a religion, but I wouldn't consider Japanese people who goes to Shinto shrines religious people. It's just like more part of the culture. Like this is established here, and it's not only the shrine; it comes out of the shrine, and you have commercials of big brands and products where you can find yokai or you can find kamis, and that's the very interesting and fascinating thing of Japan that all these fantastical elements are so present in everywhere, in media, in life, in general, in the street. And so yeah, talking having these things present in Japan, it's kind of like easier because the setting allows you to have them there without like it's very interesting even in the Yakuza games. I remember Yakuza 4 there was like a side quest with a kappa, and you wouldn't say that Yakuza is a fantasy game or anything like that. It's a story about Yakuza, right? But it's there and no one questions that because it's kind of part of Japan as a whole. And yeah, last time I saw you, all of that is present, and also being a coming of age adventure with a 12-year-old protagonist, all those elements when you are growing up, when you're still half kid, half adult, they make more sense, right, in your life or in the story, and they combine well. So I guess that's why they are so present in Last Time I Saw You, and also being this a love story somehow, and having elements like in the case of love that it's difficult to tangle or to fully know. Same as with all these spiritual elements. I think it was a very interesting combination. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Super interesting. Yeah, I really like the kappa in your game. It's very cute. Like everyone knows what a kappa is, and everyone has their own
Mm.
interpretation, but it always revolves around the cucumbers. I just love
Yes.
that. It's like it's like shared
Yeah.
culture there. Yeah, so I mean, we're all on LudoNarraCon, so it's quite clear that our games are very narrative forward. And I know this is probably a question that comes up quite often for the genre that all of you occupy, but how do you balance narrative with gameplay to make sure this is still a game and not, cinema? And I think, Scott, because your game is so cinematic in itself, I just wanted to ask you as well, like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question because we all often keep questioning ourselves that what is gameplay actually? Is pressing a button gameplay as well? Because maybe just by pressing a button, it can convey enough a sense of involvement. It can convey enough a sense of involvement while playing through the game. So like for us, I think I can kind of explain it through our playtest process. So during our playtest, we always ask the player that how involved they are in, so how immersive they're inside the game. So there's two kinds of people. Um, if there's a lot of stories, if it's like there's no interaction whatsoever, it's all narrative, and they feel bored, their immersiveness will drop. And there's other kind of player is that there's not enough story, but they're way too much walking around and pressing buttons. Their immersiveness will drop as well. So it's like a constant of trying to find the balance. So for us, I think for our game, narratives always comes in first place. But how we can design the interactions that complements the narrative is a big problem we are constantly solving. So how to create like an interaction that won't pull the player out from the narrative. Yeah, it's something that we kept trying to test through our playtests and trying to find an answer as well. Yeah.
Rhea, with Fishbowl, when I played the demo, there were a couple of mini games, but the mini games were also kind of woven into the narrative as well. Is that sort of an intentional decision, and are we expecting more from that in the game when it comes out?
Yeah, we were very intentional about our mini games because we wanted to make sure that they flow really well with the narrative and become an integral part of both the main character as well as the story. So, for example, what Sam is referring to is that in the game, Alo is going through all of these packages that belong to that have belongings of her late grandmother, and as she's solving each of the unpacking puzzles, she receives memories from her childhood. So that allows players to get this sort of vignette into the life of Alo as a child and a relationship that she shared with her grandmom as well as her mom at that time. And she's also a video editor and she's working from home for this big social media star. So there is a video editing mini game inside of Fishbowl where you get to meet all of her work colleagues and you get to see how their story unfolds as well. So these are kind of like the basis on which we've built Fishbowl, and then we are trying our best to make sure that as the game progresses, there is enough interest and intrigue in in both of these mini games that keep the player engaged. We've also tried our best to craft the story such that it is mainly, as Scott as well mentioned, it's the story that holds the player's attention the most, and it's narrative focused. But of course, the gameplay has to go along with it as well. Another aspect that we thought of was that because Fishbowl has such difficult themes of grief and loss and broken dreams, it's really important for the player to feel very comforted and welcome into the world. So we made sure that when somebody picks up like the controller or they're playing on their laptop, they immediately feel a sense of ease and that the gameplay is not something that the player finds challenging. It's the narrative and the difficult emotional arcs that get the focus to be challenging in the game.
Amazing. And then, Juan, before I hand it over to you, when I think of gameplay in your game, like I specifically think about the baseball, the batting mini game,
Mm.
and I just want to say, like, the sound for that is so good. Every time you hit the ball properly, like, it's so satisfying. I feel like I'm
Wow.
like Shohei. I feel like I'm like Shohei Otani, like hitting a home run. So I really like the sound for that. but
Wow.
tell us about how you balance gameplay and narrative in your game.
Thank you. Well, this is as someone who likes narrative games and makes narrative games, same as Scott said, this is the main fight we always have, right? Like, why aren't we making a movie? Why are we making a game, right? If we want what we want is to tell a story, and that's the complicated part. There is also like a general feeling that I personally don't share, that narrative games are boring, like in general, like visual novels are so boring. This is not a game. And that is same as Scott said, like is pressing a button gameplay. Well, yes, actually, even a menu navigation could be considered gameplay, right? But yeah, like basically, since there is this general feeling, and of course we want to reach as many people as possible. In the case of last time I saw you, we tried that the movement of the character, which is what you are doing most of the time, would feel kind of fast and responsive. So it's not like you have to slowly walk to the places. You can actually run, you can jump. There is some little platforming. There is a bat that you can interact with the environment with, but there's no actual platforming. There's not actual like serious combat. It's just like a tool, and I think those are the little things that makes the brain awake and feel like you are actually doing something. A good example. There is many games, being one of the examples, Hollow Knight, where there's like grass that you can cut. Like there's no purpose on that. It's just like you press the button and there is a sprite that now it's broken, and it's such a small thing, but it makes you feel like you're actually doing something. So maybe if you have to walk a long run, but you put things that you can break and maybe they give you money or something, you're actually providing some entertainment during that segment, and I think that's what we tried to do with last time I saw you. This is a narrative game. You are talking to people. You have to search for stuff, bring it back, but we try to make the journey or the distances between those elements be entertaining enough. Uh, and actually visually entertaining as well. Like not only the stuff that you can do, but also the making the environment. But yeah, I guess the most interesting thing here is like how to adapt the medium we are working with to the narrative. Like same as Scott said at the beginning, like is it possible to just pressing a button at a specific moment have like a strong emotional meaning? Yes, there is. There is the meme of Call of Duty, like press F to pay respects. But there is
Yeah.
also many ways of doing the same thing maybe in another context that for me, like a QT, like a quick time event has been emotionally strong in some cases, right? So I think it's possible. It's just like how to balance that, how to yeah, I guess balance will be the word. How to do that, but yeah, I want to say that necessarily a narrative game doesn't need to be boring. Mm. There is a lot of things apart from the text that support that text, the sound, the UI, and yeah, and it's really interesting to explore those things, and I'll be happy to keep learning about how to do that better. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really interesting points, and definitely narrative games are not boring.
Yeah, I
We can
think
all,
if the player are involved enough, the game
Mm.
is not boring. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I do want to acknowledge that our topic is, inherently very personal, especially for all three of you. And I just have a bit of a curveball question here, and I can start with Rhea, if I may. How do you think your younger self, like your younger child, would react if they played Fishbowl?
Can you say that again, Sam?
How do you think your younger self, like you as a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old would react to playing Fishbowl?
That's such a good question. Um, Firstly, like at that age, I think I would find it like really magical, like video game as a concept. Because I remember the first video game I ever played, I was probably like 12 or 13 years old on my cousin's computer, and it really felt like magic. And it was funnily a narrative game, and it just felt like anything can happen here. So I think as a 10-year-old, I might kind of feel like, oh, Aloe is my friend, and like, is she going to be okay? It's also a slightly dark game for a 10-year-old to play, but Um, yeah, it would be really interesting. I think I as a slightly like maybe as a teenager I would understand it a bit more and understand the themes and the deeper meaning behind things a bit more. But as a 10-year-old it would just feel like a lot of fun, like, oh, I can go here, I can make myself coffee, I can sleep at whatever time, like it would feel very fun. Yeah.
And for Juan, I mean, 10 years in Japan, does releasing last time I saw you sort of feel like an encapsulation of all of your experiences in Japan?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's going back to the first question of today's talk. There is a lot of personal stuff there, and not only personal stuff that happened to me personally, but people around me, and of course that's been like a. It's just like as I said, like if I didn't go to Japan, maybe this game wouldn't exist. So it's definitely related, and in my case that's what makes it perhaps like feel more honest or more real. And I think that when there is, and that's why I like this kind of movies, games, books, when there is like a personal story from the author or the authors behind it, it really conveys like a stronger connection, and I personally love that. So having created something that has transmitted these feelings to other people, for me it's like a really big honor, and I'm really thankful for this comment. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And Scott, I guess, Opus has been running. This is the fourth game now. You've got sort of, the most amount of experience amongst all of us here. How does it feel kind of looking back and now that you're on the fourth game?
I think for the 10-year-old of me, aside of being like super proud of myself in the future who can start making games, I think they'll, apart from the first game, they'll be super bored. because because I think all of our games has always conveyed the idea of losing something, but while losing it, you grow. There's something that you grow from it. So I think at the early age of them, they won't experience so much loss. So it really targeted towards more like 18 plus people. So for the 18 years old of me, I hope he can find courage by experiencing these stories with the characters, basically.
Amazing. So we are basically at time, and I just want to say, it's been a real privilege to hear from all three of you about your experiences. This has been such a cozy and personal experience for me as well. So thank you so much. Maybe we can all quickly plug our games before we wrap it up. Why don't we start with Scott and then Rhea and Juan?
Okay, so our newest game is called Opus Prison Peak, and it's coming soon. So please wishlist, follow on Steam. Thank you.
Fishbowl demo is out right now on Steam and on PlayStation 5, so you can check it out. It's a short window into what the full game is going to be like. So yeah, take a look, wishlist it if you like it, and
Yeah, of course they'll like it.
Yeah. And well, last time I saw you was released in October last year on Steam, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, and Xbox. It's available to purchase already in Europe. It's also physical on. There's a physical edition for Switch and PlayStation 5. And if you like games like Night in the Woods, Mutazione, A Space for the Unbound, I think you will like it. So please take a look. Yeah.
You'll love it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. And on that note as well, do want to do a quick shout out to our friends at Toge Productions and Mojiken Studios for making the amazing game A Space For The Unbound, which inspired this entire topic. Hope our conversation inspires more developers to make games rooted in personal history, memory, and the surreal as well. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, everyone. Bye.
thank you,
See you
Sam, for
guys.
Bye
being
bye.
an amazing host.